Hey, what's up, peeps? You're listening to the Let Loose with Lou podcast. I'm a full time working woman, mother of three, and a wifey to one lucky man. My passion is getting to know people, listening to their stories, and learning from their points of view on life. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy it. Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Let Loose with Lou. Today I have my co host,
What's
Tuna.
up? What's
What's going
up?
on? And my co host, Steve.
Howdy, guys. Good to be here.
He's like, and our guest today is Kathy Famalete.
Lamalate?
Famalate.
That's
Famalate. See, I still messed it up. Gosh
it's all
darn it.
good.
That's
Gosh darn it.
okay.
Famalate. So our topic today is on. Would you like to
So this is a somewhat heavy one, but it's one that I believe we should definitely talk about, especially for the organization that you represent.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about mothers of murdered children,
Parents.
or
Okay.
parents. I'm sorry, parents of murdered children. Apologies. So yeah,
So
that's
this
it.
is going to be a great topic, guys. So tune in, pay attention, and listen out. So Steve, are you intrigued with this?
Yeah, I'm incredibly intrigued. I'm incredibly inspired. Like tonight's a really fortunate one for us to have a woman of this caliber joining us. It's really it's an honor and it's an inspiration just to get to know you and to hear your experience. So, tonight what we're hoping to do is have you, Kathy, feel very respected, very much honored for your experience. And what I want to start with is just you maybe talking about um, the nonprofit, what it is, who it serves, and then just getting to hear your experience.
Okay. Okay. Um, like they said, it's Parents of Murdered Children. We are the Los Angeles chapter, which was founded in 2012, but our organization was created 46 years ago.
Wow.
It's based out of Cincinnati. It was two parents that lost their daughter. Their daughter's boyfriend killed her, and they didn't have anybody to talk to. They just didn't know what to do. They ended up going to their church and talking to their priest and shared their experience and how, they just felt so alone. And he says, I have a couple other parents in the parish that are going through the same thing. And so they got together with two or three other parents and they met in their living rooms and talked for a few years, and it grew, and eventually they founded Parents of Murdered Children Incorporated, which is a national organization. It started off as Parents of Murdered Children, and it was just for parents, but as time went on, they realized that it was important to open it up to all survivors. So, although it's called Parents of Murdered Children, they didn't want to change the name. We support anybody that's lost somebody to homicide, brothers, sisters, friends, colleagues, whoever. If you've lost somebody, we're here for you.
And
And
how is this close to your heart?
it's close to my heart because in 1988, matter of fact, February 19th, February 19th, 1988, I got the phone call that my 18-year-old nephew had been shot. And I was in the dark and I rushed to the hospital, and I was actually in the room when the doctors were examining him, and I overheard them say that there was absolutely nothing they could do. He had been shot in the head.
Mm.
Um, there was nothing they could do. So we had him on life support for a couple days, made the decision, my brother and my sister in law made the decision to donate his organs, which we believe he would have wanted us to do. But at that time, we still had no clue why or who or what would,
Intentions.
what,
So you guys,
why.
yes.
And it turned out that what it was, we lived in a community in Harbor City, very affluent, middle class. And my nephew ended up growing up with this kid.
Mhm.
They all lived in the same neighborhood. He didn't hang around with him, but he knew him.
Mhm.
This kid was starting to hang around with gangs and stuff. And it turned out that we find out later that this kid needed a ride for whatever reason, and his exact words were, "I needed a ride by Friday night at 8 o'clock, and I needed to jack somebody." And that meant you needed to kill somebody for a truck. So he asked my nephew, even though he was friends with him, and my nephew, being a good kid and a friendly kid and a nice kid, "Okay, I'll give you a ride." And he picked him up, unbeknownst to him that this what this kid was going to do. And
Jeez.
anyway, we were blessed that he pleaded guilty when he was caught about a week later. And it's now been 35 years. Um, our experience was we did want to keep him in, obviously, as long as we could. So we actually had 6 parole hearings. We went to different police, different prisons all over the Southern California. And it's not easy. We were fortunate not to have to go through a trial, but sitting through parole hearings is a whole nother story in itself. Sitting there, they're not over in a half hour. They're 3, 4, 5 hours at a time, sitting in a small room with the perpetrator, and you're trying to get in their head, like, you know, who who told you that it was okay to do this? Who told you, this or that? And you still walk away never knowing, like, what what was in his head that made him do that. And I was 30 years old at the time and no children, wasn't married, no children of my own. And all my nieces and nephews were my kids.
Mhm.
I was older. I changed Anthony's diaper. I fed him. I went to his little league games. I took him to his prom and dropped him off. And,
Mm.
even though he was a nephew, it was very traumatic for me, and it
Absolutely.
was painful to watch my brother and my sister-in-law,
Mm.
the pain that they went through and still go through. My sister-in-law's not with us anymore, but to this day, my brother still suffers that he
Absolutely.
doesn't have a son with him. And so that was my first one, and God forbid, who would have thought we'd have more. But then in the last 15 years, I've lost 3 cousins to homicide. One was a love triangle.
Mm.
One was just a confrontation, which could have ended up in a fist fight, but the guy decided to kill him. And the third was domestic violence.
Wow.
So we've went through 2. I wasn't there for my cousin Tisha's case, so I didn't go through the trial. But the other 2, we went through the trials, and they both got convicted, and they were both, put away. But the devastation and sitting in the courtroom, and you know, it's just watching my aunts cry for their grandchildren and my cousins cry for their children, and the memories, and nobody should have to go through this.
No.
Nobody. And our family's been through it 4 times now. And it just like, who would have thought? I look back, and my mom, my Aunt Mary, my Aunt Gata, they all got married together. They all had their children together. And who would have thought that all 3 of them would bury grandsons?
Mm.
Who would have thought, for homicide?
Yes.
It's not natural. And I
No.
remember my mother saying to me, "I'm 70 something years old. Why didn't God take me? Why did she take
Oh.
my grandson? He's only 18. He has all this life to live. And that that's my story, my personal story of the pain that we've been through. Anthony was particularly, and I'll share this with you because I'm not, afraid. When I was 30 years old, I was deep and deep, 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 deep in my alcoholism.
Mm.
And Anthony was 18 years old, and I was living with my brother, and he was living there. And he was telling me, "What are you doing?
Mm.
Why are you drinking so much, Auntie Kathy?" what are you doing? You're coming home late. You're not going to work. What are you doing? You're just, and then when he got killed, I was like, wait a minute, it hit me one day that here I was throwing my life away,
Mm.
and his was ripped out of his hands. And
That's
he has always been that little angel on my shoulder of why I got sober.
Thank you, Steve.
And 35 years later, I'm still sober. And why I got involved in Parents of Murdered Children in memory of him and his legacy.
mm,
Because I feel like from our experience of what we went through with him and the impact he had on my life is I have to give back.
Yes. I'm so sorry.
I have to help others get through what we went through. And because of him, I know that I had to get sober because I had to get sober for me,
Mhm.
but he was the main reason. And he's that little angel on my shoulder that tells that, he was like, you know, there was no reason for his life to be ripped. And I was throwing my way. And shame on me if I had continued down that path. And by the grace of God, I'm not. And I'm here today. And in Anthony's memory, I'll continue to do this.
now,
Kathy, there's so many things I'm thinking. There's so many things I'm feeling that I could say. Um, one is it's just to have a child, a loved one murdered is a Louise and I were talking about earlier. It's a bizarre death. It's a death that should never occur.
It's like
It should never happen.
no, it's like
And
being ripped out of like something that
you're almost instinctively
you're getting
you're
robbed.
right. So
Yes.
you have this child, and you have an idea of how you want to raise this child, and I mean, this is your blood, right? This is
Yes, like
you're passing on your genes, your legacy,
genes.
everything. And for somebody to just take it like that,
I got the
it's
chills
yeah,
because
it's sad.
It's
I was
it's
just reading about the importance of aligning yourself with natural law and all that is, and that if you're harmonious with natural law, you can be successful. But when you go against that, bad things happen. That's what this is, right? Like, it's something very primal and instinctive to care for a loved one, to show up in a particular way, and when that's like forcibly removed,
I
it's
mean,
a
It's
it's an
almost like you
atrocity. That's
lose
really
you
how
well,
do
lose
you
that
come back from
purpose.
that?
Like, you
before
don't
you
even know what to
do,
do with
I
yourself,
mean,
right?
Which is
you
what my
you
question
don't.
is like, can you speak to more of like what we've got people out here hopefully watching this that are gonna hopefully be very inspired by your journey. Like, what was your experience like? What were those feelings? How did you kind of come to the place that you're at today? Like, what was that like? What do you see with people in your organization? How are they served?
Well, when after it happened, my sister-in-law really just needed somewhere to go, someone to support, some support. Like you say, it's different. I mean, even the grief support that's out there today, losing a child or a loved one to a car accident or cancer or whatever is totally different than a homicide.
mhm.
You have the feelings and the anger towards this person that made a decision to do that. You have to deal with the justice system.
And that's
You have to go to
yes,
court. You have
sit
all these
there.
unanswered questions. So,
Ugh,
you know, um,
like my
and then there's people that don't wanna talk about homicide. Your family sometimes don't wanna talk about it. They don't understand it. They don't wanna hear it, and as time goes on, it gets even worse sometimes. Friends and family, like, don't understand it. So, that's why a group like ours is so important because you can talk about homicide as much as you want. You can talk about the details if you need to talk about it. You can talk about the anger and the frustration and the court case and whatever it is you need to talk about because everybody in that room feels exactly what you feel, you
And
know?
that's what, like, my question is, being in that courtroom face to face with this person, what was the emotions, the adrenaline going through you, like, at that moment?
Obviously, I don't think there's anybody that hasn't said that they didn't wanna cross the little
Yes,
fence and
I know.
put their arms around their throat, but, you restrain yourself and you leave it up to the justice system, but, it's horrible and it's not easy to do, and I go to court with people. One of the things we do as an organization, we do a lot of court accompaniment. And, the first thing that the judge will tell you and the DA will tell you, if you get out of hand in here, you will get thrown out of the courtroom and you will not be let back in.
Mm.
So when I walk into the courtroom with survivors, I tell them, hey, as much as you want to say things, as much as you want to react, as much as you want to do these things, if you want to stay in this courtroom and see it through, you gotta restrain yourself. Wait till we get outside, let your anger out there, but it's hard. It's hard, especially when you see the person for the first time
Mm.
and you're like, "What gave you the right?" It's difficult, and I see people. We do court accompaniment. I'd probably do 2 or 3 a week, and it's hard for these families to see them.
Is that something that the organization does? Is that one
It's
of the services
This one
that
of
you
the
guys
services
offer?
we provide is court accompaniment, where
Okay.
we will go with them, and even though the justice systems provides a victim advocate,
Mhm.
it's not always the same. Sometimes they want that person that knows exactly what they feel, and
Mhm.
sometimes a court advocate has to run from different places, different courts or whatever, so we're there consistently with them. We answer questions. Like I tell them, "I don't know all the answers, but I'll find it.
Mhm.
Okay.
I have enough resources." And,
And do you
I
guys have
wanted
like
to s
a
I
working?
wanted to get back to,
Okay,
how
yes.
we found POMC. It was
Mhm.
my sister-in-law, needed some support, so we found this lady in Rancho Palos Verdes that was doing meetings. Didn't know anything about it, so we showed up, and it was Mrs. Sharon Tate's mom. Sharon
Wow.
Tate's mom, Doris Tate.
Wow.
Really?
And she was doing parents of murdered children.
Wow.
She had been associated with the organization 35 years ago,
Wow.
and she was doing the meetings, and we stayed there for a couple years with other families, and then little by little, she got ill, and it kinda dissolved, and then years later, when there were just so many homicides in the harbor area, my other cousin and I, who lost her nephew, we said, everything that POMZ provided during those 2 years for us, that's what we could offer to other survivors, so let's petition the national and see if we can't open a chapter here, and that's what we
Mm.
did, the LA
Wow,
chapter,
that's
so
So are you
beautiful.
one of the founders, kind
no,
of the chapter?
of the chapter, yes.
Yes.
My cousin Amanda Rodriguez and I both founded, the Los Angeles chapter.
Okay,
Right,
okay.
right, right, and we've
Beautiful.
been around since 2012 now.
And do you guys directly work with, like, the DA and the judges and stuff
We
like that,
we
or?
we liaison between them. Yeah,
Okay.
I when we do our survivor input form, we ask for your DA's number, your detective's numbers, just in case, we need to
Mhm.
contact them on your behalf. Right now, I'm working on unsolved murders. I'll call a detective and say, "Hey, can we get a reward?" And you know what I mean? It's just to
Mhm.
help expedite whatever we can. Or
Mhm.
sometimes they don't. They're they're so distraught they don't understand what's
Yes.
being said to them,
Mm.
so sometimes I'll call the detective and say, they're not clear about what you said about that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we do a lot of liaison between law enforcement and advocates and
Mm.
other groups like ours.
And it's mostly all the divisions, Long Beach, Los
We
Angeles,
work because we cover all of LA
mhm,
County. We work
from
with
San Bernardino all the way to
Oh.
well, we have the organization has 46 chapters across the country.
wow.
And I believe we have 6 just in California. We have San Diego, Inland Empire, which is San Bernardino Riverside,
Mm.
Orange County, LA chapter, Ventura, and Sacramento. So I believe we have 6 in California right now, and but we're all associated to the national, and we are responsible to them. They are our parent
So that you guys are
organization.
branched out from
Yeah,
got it.
yes, yeah. We have
I want to
articles
just
of
chime in and say something that I think's like not to be missed. I've never heard of such a service like this. I'm very impressed. Is it feels like there's such a degree of heart and intelligence and professionalism around like this very unique population of people who go through this process. And what I really like hearing is like normalizing that there's so many of these people who just want to jump across that gate and strangle that perpetrator,
Oh yeah.
right? And that your organization really understands that and goes, hey, I get that this you're gonna want to do this and you squeeze my hand or whatever you guys do.
exactly.
Like, but we're here with you, and I think what's really good for people to hear is like that how instinctively normal it would be to want to do that, right? And to be like this human that's giving them this connection, or like, hey man, like they don't really understand. They're just hearing like beep boop beep 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 beep. They're so distraught and
Mm.
upset, and of course they are, right? Like of course. So just to kind of like not, and to have a person like yourself say, I'm gonna listen for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm gonna advocate for you. I'm
Right.
gonna if you didn't get all that, I'll explain it, or we can ask more questions because like how often, and I'll let you answer that. How often does that happen for folks where they're so overwhelmed that it's like they register very little?
It happens
Is it
quite a bit. It happens quite a bit, and we spend hours. Our board spends hours on the phone, away from the courtroom, or in between support group meetings, which we have once a month or whatever, just explaining them different things to them. Like we were in court the other day in Long Beach court, and we explained to the family, and they were like blown away. You're not even going to get your preliminary hearing for more than a year, and they're
Wow.
thinking it's going to happen in a couple months, right? And
Right.
they're like, no, be prepared. This is a very long process, and then this is a step, and this is a step, and this is a step, and they get mad and they get angry, and you're just,
Imagine the emotions that run
yeah,
through.
and
I
then
mean, can
having
you
to wait, and
imagine?
even if they plead guilty, well, even if they plead guilty, there's still all these processes that the law gives to them. They're unfortunately, perpetrators are afforded so many
Chances.
so
Yeah.
many so many
God.
That's another.
rights and laws and whatever,
Mm.
and a lot of times the victims were left behind, and that's another thing we do is we're constantly advocating to not be left behind in resources, in being reminded that we're here. There's the other side of it. It isn't just the perpetrators that
Kathy,
need it.
can I ask you, how often do you find survivors being also like feeling threatened, like this person's going to get out and then they're going to do this to
All the
me,
time.
Oh,
or they're
All
going to
the
do this
time.
to a relative of mine? Like how common is that? That they're
Very, very common, very common, and that's part of the equation here, and part of the decision making that people have to go through on what they do or how they respond, um, because you don't know, especially in the day and age when these murders are caused by gang members or whatever. There's always that fear of retaliation and stuff. So, families are torn a lot of time because they think, okay, they've already taken one, and what if I push this or what if I do that? They're going to come after my other one, or I got to live in fear. And a lot of times they move away. They move away because they're afraid,
Mhm.
and you're just, whatever your decision, we tell them, whatever your decision is, if you move to Arizona, you're still going to have my phone number. I'm going to be here for you. Don't worry about it. Whatever you need to do for your family is what you need to do, and we'll be here for you.
Do you have a story of maybe a scenario like that that's happened that
I have cases where cases are unsolved, and people are in many ways afraid to pursue them, to push for them to get solved, because they're afraid that the perpetrator or their family or whoever might come back at them. It happens. It
God.
happens. The fear, they've
Mhm.
already been traumatized already. you know?
And unfortunately for some of these, families, it's not even just one, it's like you're saying multiple, multiple children, like multiple victims
If it- Yeah,
over pointless pride or,
it is.
whatever.
And I've always said, I look at them and it's like, and I believe I even said it to the perpetrator in a parole hearing. It's like, were you not thinking about throwing your life away? You just,
Mhm.
you've
just
spent
robbed.
35 years of your life,
Ugh.
and but unfortunately, he did 35 years and he got out at 50 and now he can get married, he can have kids, and my nephew's gone.
Yeah.
Is he out?
He's out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. He's out. And I had to, me personally, you have to, and I'll be honest with you, and a lot of people won't understand this, but, I had to forgive him
Hmm.
for my own peace of mind.
Right. For your own
For my own
closure.
sanity in many ways, and
Mhm.
also as being a Christian, it's also like part of my process of, okay, Lord, this is in your hands. I hope that he just moves on with his life, doesn't do any learn from it, and doesn't hurt anybody else.
Mhm.
Just stay away from us, and I'm happy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I can't drive myself crazy. I can't at
No.
this point. We did everything we possibly could
Mhm.
over a 10-year period and 6 parole hearings and traveling across Southern California. We did everything. We kept him in like 8 more years than possible than he was sentenced to.
So it doesn't stop right then and there. You guys are continuously
It's years later.
engaged.
Yeah.
Years later, you're still dealing with it.
Well, see,
You
Can
know?
I
because
ask
they
you? I want to
care.
ask you two things. I'm thinking, uh, like I wonder if a survivor or that family sometimes feels like it's even multiple grief of like, let's say, I'm now afraid to live in the current city that I'm in, and then they move away to another place. It's like new surroundings, new people. They've let their friends and family go, and it's almost like
Yeah,
multiple deaths, and all they have maybe is this organization that gives them support.
right.
Have you seen that kind of thing? And then also,
Yeah.
you were speaking about your own kind of observation of healing, like what you had to do to heal. I'm interested to hear you talk about like what worked for you, and like what have you seen work for other people, like their process of
Well,
coming through something like this.
yeah, I've seen people that have had to leave, and unfortunately, we don't have a lot of chapters across the state, the country. But the one good thing that came out of COVID
Mhm.
was us going via Zoom,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I have continued. Most of our chapters have continued meeting both in person and via Zoom.
Mhm.
So people have moved out. The murder may have occurred in LA, but they've moved out of state, but they could stay connected to us, even
Right.
if there's not a chapter in the area. I even have 3 families from Australia that don't have a group there that they're happy to be part of, and they're
And they
part of
come
ours
over here?
by joining by
Via
connecting
through
us with
Zoom.
Zoom.
Wow.
They connect with us from Zoom, and they're part of our Facebook support group, and you know what I mean? And they're on our email, and they get information from us, and
Mhm.
so I made it a point, and a lot of our chapters did, to still do it via Zoom, even
That's a
though
great idea.
I
Mhm.
I personally like the in person, because when you can sit next to somebody, when you can hug that person, it's so much more healing and comfortable. But the Zoom has really allowed people to stay connected. And in particular, LA County is so large.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I got the 3 families leading into the story of Gabriel Fernandez and Anthony Avalos and Noah Cuatro, these little boys that were murdered by their mothers and their boyfriends and whatever. Their families live in Lancaster and Palmdale, and it's hard for them to drive out here for a support group meeting when we meet in San Pedro. So they join us by Zoom, and yet they can stay connected. And as far as the healing process for me, it was POMC. It was being around others. It was helping others. It takes you out of your own pain, your own sorrow, um, exchanging feelings, um,
Emotion.
emotions, and my faith. The Lord walked me through a lot of it, but I'd have to say most of it is POMC. And I forgot to mention that.
So you
Do you,
started as someone who was a participant and then moved into this leadership role.
yeah, yeah. And we were talking a little bit earlier about that. Sometimes I was talking with my board, and we were sharing that there's 8 of us, and we were sharing that sometimes we have elevated ourselves, and I don't mean elevation in a good way, but we've had to move ourselves up to be the provider, right?
Hmm.
And we forget that we're survivors.
Mm,
And we forget sometimes to check in on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of occurred with the board member that felt like maybe, we weren't supporting her as much. And it came to light. And I'm blessed that it was brought to our attention, and then we had that conversation, and now we can correct it. None of us are perfect. None of us are always going to do things right, but we have to remember that, we're survivors too, first and foremost, and that we have to take care of each other first before we can help others, you
And
know?
yes, that's really good information. I do appreciate that. But I want to kind of go back a little bit about Gabriel, because it's interesting that today I was, searching about God, just in general, and he popped up, and God, like 10 years have passed by fast. It's been 10 years since this happened. He would have been 18 years
I
old.
know, I know. Um,
18.
I wasn't highly involved in the Gabriel Fernandez case, and I'll be honest with you, I still haven't watched the documentary. I just can't bring myself to. But I do know the family.
Mhm.
Um, I was Anthony Avalos was the next little boy. A few years ago, I got like 6 young boys
Mhm.
that were brought to my chapter,
Oh.
and that was a hard year for us. They all kind of came at once. To kill an adult is one thing. To kill a child is another.
Right.
For a mother or a father to kill
it's
their own child
I
is total insanity,
I don't
and it's
understand it.
beyond
Yeah,
comprehension.
I just don't get
And
it.
when you go to court and you sit there and you look at them
They
and you
have no
can't get in their
remorse.
head, and you hear the horror of the facts of what they did to Anthony, what they did to Gabriel. You're as mothers, or even if you're not a parent, just a human being, how do you do that to another human being? And it's just
Let alone a child.
it a self-defense, no, a
Yeah,
defenseless
defenseless.
A
child.
defenseless, yes. I did get to watch a documentary, and it was just so sad that they treated a dog better than they
Yeah,
treated him.
I know.
I mean, they put him in a cupboard. Like, and my thing is, through this whole entire documentary, didn't have no remorse.
No,
Like,
they don't.
none.
They don't. They don't.
None.
And they're never gonna get what they deserve.
Mm.
Is your
Mm,
experience that like the judges identify that pretty good and sentence that accordingly, or what have you seen with when the judges are like witnessing a murder like that?
Well, yeah, in these cases, yes, and the DAs and both of these cases, the DA was a wonderful DA, Jonathan Hatami, and he fought and fought and fought for these little boys, and he's currently fighting for Noah Quattro, who was killed by his mother, and the judges, they put on these cases, and the judges listen, and they really strongly, pay attention. But on the other side, I have a case, and I can talk about it because our board member, Ana Estevez, her 5-year-old little boy was killed by his father.
Oh,
Jesus.
my
And
God.
it took Anna advocating for a new piece of legislation that was just signed into law January 1st. It went into effect that judges were not, in her case, she begged them. She begged him, "Give me a restraining order." She begged him,
This
"Don't
is
give
what I
him
want to get into.
unsupervised visits. He's coming home with bruises. He doesn't wanna go with his daddy." And she begged him
No.
and begged him.
See,
Well,
mm,
he let him have unsupervised visit, and he took his little boy. He
mm,
took his little boy. He took his little boy to Disneyland that day, and then he drove him up to the mountains and he suffocated him
Oh my
Oh my
God.
God.
and he left him there.
Mm.
And 71 days later, they caught up with him and he went and lived his life and finally caught up with him and took him where he left his little boy. And Anna, she just got awarded a remarkable woman by KTLA 5 because of her advocacy on behalf of her little boy. And it's now called Peaky's Law. And what this law does is it requires judges in California to have training, because a judge can come from probate court
Mm-hmm.
or any kind of court and go work in family court
Mm.
without training.
Yep.
Mm.
And
Mm.
family
I've seen
court
that.
is
Mm.
so
It's different.
complex.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's very
It's
complex.
so complex.
Yes.
And
Like I've never.
the first time around, this was the second session that she tried to get it through, and it got blocked by the judges because they didn't want to be told that they needed training. They didn't want this many hours. It's like they're above the
They're
law,
cocky.
Jeez.
They're very cocky.
but she fought and she fought and she fought and she got, the right people. She got Senator Susan Rubio to carry the bill.
Wow.
And we advocated for a bunch of other senators and assemblies to jump on board, and it eventually passed this time around unanimously in the Senate and the Assembly, and got signed. And and it got signed by Governor Newsom. And so Peaky, his legacy is going to live on. But unfortunately, Anna has to live with the pain of not having her only child, her only child. But there you go, this is a mother that took her pain and her sorrow and turned it into strength and courage so that no other mother or father or family has to go through what she went through. I don't know how she did it. I just so proud to
Strength.
walk beside her.
That's really
know?
miraculous. I mean, this is I can only imagine this woman's rage, right? She instinctively, intuitively, intelligently knew this is going to be bad, this is going to be bad, this is going to be bad, and was not like listened to at the expense of a life.
Right.
And
And it's
I don't
not the
know
only
how
time.
she developed the muscle, but like clearly, remarkably, miraculously did what you said, right? And pursued change in law, forcing
Right.
training for judges so that this happens less and hopefully not at all.
Right. The other part of the law is that it requires, obviously, reporting afterwards. Are they taking the training, and what are the outcome? But I don't know if you've ever heard about these reunification camps. And these are reunification camps that were not sanctioned by the state of California or governed by the state of California. They're for-profit reunification camps where they would take, for example, let's say you were married to me and we were getting a divorce, and I'm saying he's abusing them. He's abusing them. And these reunifications would take these children with the judge's permission, take these children out of my care and go ahead and put them in your care.
Ugh.
And if that didn't work, they would take them to these camps. Physically, the judge would order police officers or whatever to go pick up this kid and take them out of the setting that they feel safe in, take them to this camp where they don't know anybody, away from their schools, and in there, because they're being paid. They're being paid by the other
Yeah. It's
parent.
all about the
Yeah.
money.
the other
Yep.
parent, and they're brainwashed and they're told, no, that didn't really happen, and their father's really not doing that, or your mother's not really doing this, and they're getting paid $15,000-$20,000 a weekend or more, and this bill bans those reunification camps.
Good.
You can no longer have those in the California. They've probably moved out of state because as of January 1st, they're illegal and they're going to get chased
Thank
after.
God.
but the bill did awesome to protect children from that plight, you know.
Mhm.
Mm.
So I'm so proud of Anna and all of her heart. God bless Susan Rubio, Senator Rubio. Thank you for championing this bill. All the
Absolutely.
senators and the assembly members that jumped on board with it. And sadly, we're not going to be able to stop all of this,
It's
but
a beginning.
it's a
Mhm.
beginning. And if one life is saved, then it was worth it. You know?
Can I talk to you about something? I think now is the right time to ask you about it. I'm interested to ask you about like just life itself. You know, like one of the things that you said that caught my eye is you had this relationship with your nephew when he was alive, and he said, "Auntie, what's up with the drink? You know, like what are you doing?" And it sounds like it was like a loving, risky gesture by a nephew to an aunt
It
about
was.
about life.
Mm.
And then his life was taken, and there's something about him that feels very like alive in you, where it's like he's part of my recovery. He's part of saving my own life. Um, and I feel like it's not to be missed. Like, you know, life, death, living, existence. So it's a weird thing, but it feels like he did something for you.
Like
Uh,
there was a sacrifice,
like
right?
he inspired your recovery, or that you
Mhm.
for you to save
Yes.
your own life, or to
Mhm.
live this different way. And I would like to, if you would, like maybe talk a bit about that.
Well,
Is that right to say? Am I saying that
no,
the right way?
no, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I truly believe, it was like a haunting, that little angel when I continued to drink afterwards, because believe me, I was angry, and the first day I saw the perpetrator for the first time, and, I went out and drank, and I was angry. If you want to talk about drinking before, I was drinking for quite a few months afterwards with the anger and the frustration and the pain. But there was always Anthony's little voice in my head, like, why are you doing this? And what are you doing? And then I'm like, hey, I'm throwing it away. His was taken. If I could trade it right now, I'd trade it in a heartbeat because I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. Look at what my life is becoming. I'm about ready to lose my job. My life is all messed up. I'll trade it in a heartbeat. And, you know, we always question or ask God, what is your purpose? You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
and I do know, it's kind of a weird thought because I do know there were two young boys that were kind of hanging around with the perpetrator in the neighborhood that were ready to go this way. But after Anthony's death, knowing Anthony as well,
Mm. They changed it?
their whole trajectory went another way.
Whoa.
So realistically, by your nephew passing, he saved multiple lives, and he's continuing to save lives to this day because you're spreading that message.
That's what
And
I
Yeah.
just
and
said.
I hate to believe that his life had to be sacrificed for me to live because as you know, in alcoholism or drug addiction, you've only got three options. It's insanity, death, or prison. And I was headed down that road.
Mm.
That's what was in line for me. But I hate to think that his had to be sacrificed, but I have to accept the fact that he isn't here. So all I can do is live the best and give back as much as I can in his honor, because if his life was sacrificed so that I could live, I have to do this.
True.
And you are, right?
Yeah.
Like
You
it
are.
sounds like
Absolutely.
you do it as a woman of recovery for inspiration for people who have addiction issues, and you do it for families that are hurting,
Suffering and
and being like
hurting.
a beacon of light, and a leader, and an example. Is that? I mean, it sounds like it's obvious, but have you discovered that to be your purpose driven life? Like what
Yeah,
gives you the most fulfillment?
yeah, yeah.
What is
Lou
your favorite part of it? What is the most satisfying and fulfilling part of your purpose that you do?
is when a survivor is able to smile and laugh, we go to our conference once a year. We have a conference and it moves around the country. And when we can be in the room with 300 people and, we could sit at the table and break bread and we can laugh and we can enjoy ourselves because there's so many days that you never think you're going to laugh again.
Oh,
These people that I meet, they don't think they're ever going to laugh. They don't think they're going to ever be able to tell stories and smile and enjoy. And they feel guilty when they do.
yeah, they live lifeless.
Yeah, they
Mm.
feel guilty when they
Mhm.
do,
Mhm.
And so when you're able to provide a space for them where they can smile and they can laugh and they can talk about their loved one
And feel
and
safe.
and feel safe, I guess that's when I feel the happiest, that I've been able to.
I mean, that's a miraculous thing, right? Like to see that moment where this person who's in such pain is now smiling or having a laugh when they never thought that was possible. Like
Mhm.
you've done your job.
Yeah.
You did your job. You
Yeah.
did your purpose in that moment.
Yeah, and just connecting, like I said before, I have one son. I will never say I know what it is to lose a child. Um, I have 3 or 4 board members that have lost children. So when a mother calls me, I'd like to share your number with another mother because only another mother or another father, you know, whatever the case is, can know what you feel. I can't possibly. And
Can't even
I've
phantom the
never
thought.
had a mother
No.
call me back and say, I don't know why I talked to that person. They've always said thank you. Talking to another mother or another father has been the best thing that I could possibly do, because they know what I feel. There's nothing I'm feeling that they don't understand, and that's all we could do is we try to be there, and that's what POMC does. Is I sit. I don't know if I mentioned I sit on the a few years ago. I decided to take it another level, and I got on the National Board of Trustees.
Wow.
Nice.
So
Congratulations.
I sit on the national level. I'm the treasurer for the organization, and at that level, we're about providing support to our chapters so that we can help survivors,
Mhm.
and do whatever we can. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is we're going to be launching our new committee for unsolved murders, cold cases, and unsolved murders, and that came because out of over 300 people that I have in my chapter, I have 90 unsolved cases.
Wow.
Wow.
And that's
Not
not
just your
That's just in
chapter.
this charter
that's
here,
just an
right?
LA chapter.
That's almost half.
And the figures are, let me give you the figures. The figures are there are 10,000 unsolved cases in LA County.
10,000?
10,000 in LA County.
That's a
There are over 250,000 nationwide.
Wow.
So these perpetrators are literally getting away with murder. And
Mm.
every day that a perpetrator is not arrested, the survivor is re-victimized because somebody is not being held accountable.
Mhm.
Somebody is getting away with taking their loved one's life, And we're just really excited to be probably launching our cold case committee where we will help um, our chapters help the survivors with resources. If you live in Riverside County, call this cold case unit. Maybe they can help you. Call Crime Stoppers, call Cold Case Foundation, do this, whatever we can do to help them get their case solved.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt for just 2 seconds. I don't
We're
know.
both just so
Yeah,
we're
I'm
both
intrigued
compelled.
by all this. But
You go, Lou.
I used to enjoy that one show with that gentleman whose son, was it the son was
America's
That's
Most
FBI's
Wanted?
Most
Yes.
Wanted.
yes. And I felt
Yep.
like that was so helpful and we need another show like that. We
Right.
really do.
Yes, we need that. And he's starting it back up, I
Oh, is
understand.
he?
hope
I heard he's
so.
starting it
Wow.
back up.
But
I
yes,
don't know for sure, but I
that
heard
took a lot of
Oh,
guts.
now I got
something like
now I
that.
got a question
Can
too.
you imagine?
Okay,
hey.
go
Yeah.
ahead, Steve.
Yeah.
I'll just say, like, I think from a cold case perspective that, that the organization wants to launch that. What excites me about it, and I'm sure that you're probably maybe already seeing this or thinking about it, is like this is probably great for that survivor or family that's really scared and doesn't want to take action. They're so frightened that this is going to happen to them and there'll be revenge on them, and they don't have to. They can get the support from the organization, and there's folks like yourself who are like, don't worry, we have the courage and the firepower behind us to push,
Yeah.
and you just sit back.
Well, we
Does that happen yet, or is
well,
that
we
kind of
actually won't be actually solving the cases or engaging in solving. What we're going to do is provide the resources to
Okay.
them to help them.
Mhm.
And the other thing we're doing is, like for example, a familial DNA cost about $37,000. Okay, just one.
I didn't know that.
And our police agencies, they don't have the money. They're so underfunded that they're struggling all the time, and they're looking for grants. And we found a couple organizations that they're about the business giving money to police departments to help them do one or two cases. So those are the kind of things we're going to do, is try to provide, not actually get into the solving of the cases,
Mhm.
but providing resources and trying to help come up with solutions
so that it can
to
happen?
both the survivor and the agencies and work
So
together.
Like a
hopefully,
roadmap.
Yeah.
Roadmap.
hopefully somebody out there will see this and maybe help in
Yeah.
some way.
Right.
Mhm.
Donate or however or whichever way to help
Right.
the organization.
Ex-
Is
And
that on your website? As far can
Well,
someone
we
donate?
haven't fully launched it yet. We're
Okay.
actually we decided to create the committee. We're in the planning stages still. We're going to have our final board meeting. We're having a meeting next weekend actually, and going over some more details. And then we're hoping to launch it at our convention in July
Okay.
if it's approved by the entire board.
like yeah, like this is like so touching. Like I would be even willing to give like 1 week out of the month, if a family would want to come in and talk about their experience, and maybe somebody knows something out there that would be able to get a hold of your organization to help you guys. Anything that
I
would
mean, if you could start a program to help us showcase, like if you go to our website, we have unsolved murders, and on there you see the picture of the victim, and you see just a little blurb about what happened to them, where it happened, and who to contact.
Mhm.
You know,
Okay, well,
and
we
if
could
you
start
if
there.
Somebody
you could,
always sees something,
Yes.
you
but people
never
are too
know.
scared to
You never
talk.
know. And the sheriff, let's see, LAPD has that right now, but the sheriffs don't. So I'm working hopefully to, convince the sheriffs, can you put their pictures on there? You never know when somebody's scrolling saying, oh my God, I remember that one.
Mhm.
And time has a funny way of you can get a perpetrator who had an accessory who now is facing life and parole, but he knows something, and all of a sudden he's willing to talk,
Mhm.
down the road. It could be
Right.
20 years down the road, but hey, now he's willing to talk. You never know. You
Yeah.
just never know. And I tell our
All about
survivors all the
timing.
time, do not give up hope. There was a case here in San Pedro,
Thank you,
a
Solomon.
family friend, 37 years. He was married at the time. The wife was pregnant. She took a walk, never came home. The
Oh.
next morning, they found her in PV. She had been raped and brutally stabbed to death.
Mm.
And, for 37 years, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know. And all of a sudden, he got the call. They got the call because of DNA. The DNA had been kept
Whoa.
properly. They were able to run the DNA. The guy had been in trouble before, so his DNA was in the system now for something else.
Mhm.
Called him up and said, we're going to go knock on his door. He lives in San Pedro. They went and picked him up and
Wow,
arrested
that
him from the
close.
murder 37 years ago.
Wow.
So I tell my
Unbelievable.
families, don't ever give up,
Give up.
especially
Yeah.
now that DNA is
Mm,
around.
Mhm.
These cases can be solved. But the
absolutely.
problem is we have understaffed, underfunded, and overworked law enforcement agencies. And there's so many homicides. They'll be working on an older case, and they have to stop what they're doing to work on a newer case.
Mhm.
Mm.
Or both LAPD and LA sheriffs, they have like a minimal 10 or 12 person cold case unit.
And that's it?
It's not enough. It's
isn't
not
that
enough.
sad
So
that
so
we have
so
no
10 people for
funds?
10,000 people.
And how do those
10
guys
or
get
20 people,
supported?
and it's not their fault. It's
Right.
just, they're short staffed on just the people to patrol the streets, let alone work the cold cases, and
Mhm.
even if you had officers to go work those, they're having to pull them off to work what's going on the streets, so
What was your question, Steve?
He's
He's
thinking.
pensive over there. What are you thinking?
His wheels are
What
spinning.
you're yes. So what's going
I'm
on?
just thinking about like what a unfortunate truth it is. It's such an unfortunate truth that there's such lack of resource, lack of manpower
It's disgustingly
to do this. And then
sad.
like when you were saying earlier, when
So
you're like,
sad.
it's so easy to forget about myself, right? And I was thinking, oh, who heals the healer, right? We're like, I'm just thinking these law enforcement guys must be exhausted. It
Oh,
must be
they're
who
Oh,
supports them, like who gives them a break from all the weight that they're carrying. It's just
It's a
it's
tough
quite
job.
a heavy deal,
especially
very heavy deal,
homicide,
very heavy
especially
deal.
homicide, the things that these people see and have to experience,
Mm.
and then they have to go home and see their families, and or the detectives, like the detective that handled the Gabriel Fernandez, and I know his children, his little boy and his little girl, and it's like, how do you go home and shut it off and just be a normal dad,
That's
and he goes,
hard.
I do, and then I lay there in bed and I'm thinking about what they did to Gabriel and what they did to Anthony, and thinking of my children, I mean, all the things that goes through his mind, but he's a fighter, and he fought for them, and he got the right outcome, and they're put away for life. So
We,
Mm.
to close this off just really quickly, it's very serious. And this kind of hits home for me because a couple of weeks ago, I was having dinner with my sister and my niece. And so my sister was telling me that my brother-in-law and my niece were walking up the street, literally like they live like right behind the grocery store. And he's like, "Hey, walk with me up to the grocery store." And kids, they're on their phone, continuously on the phone, and the parents walking up of in front. But and we live in a pretty good area too. Like our area is pretty good.
yeah.
And I guess some guy was roaming around the parking lot, keeping an eye on my niece. She's 23, but she looks like she's like 16 years old. And he came up to my brother-in-law and asked, "Hey, is that your daughter?" And my brother-in-law was, they shut things off, right? Because he's in the force also. And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, is that your daughter? Or how old is she?" And then I guess when it triggered, like, "Oh shoot, this isn't, right."
Yeah.
He grabbed her, looked at her, grabbed her, and he told her to go into into a restaurant that was there and said, "Lock the doors." And, they called enforcement, but the guy said, "Take care of her, watch over her, because you don't want to know the things I'm going to do when I get my hands on
No
her."
way.
Yes.
There,
Damn, what an
You know how
a
how my
lot of
stomach hurt?
there's a lot of sick people out there.
I mean, that's scary to think.
Yeah.
That somebody imagine you walking with your daughter and a man preying on your child, already thinking of the crap that he's gonna do to that child and letting you know. I mean,
The
like,
fucking nerve too, man. Like,
I swear, dude, I was shaking. I was just like, "Find that person, find that car."
The
Like,
world, I mean, I don't, yeah,
mm,
I'm a lot older than all of you, I'm sure, but I remember when we went trick or treating across Wilmington by ourselves. We were on the east side, west side, north side, a bunch of us, right? We were 10,
yes.
12 years old, as long as there was a bunch of us. Now, I mean, my kid went to school and we picked him up and dropped him off because not because he was a bad kid, but you were worried he'd get caught in gang warfare or whatever.
right.
The
Accidentally.
world has changed and it's just getting worse and worse to the point like my husband, I don't know how many times we sit there and like, okay, we're locked in, the doors are locked, we're watching TV, we're safe, nobody can hurt us. You get that feeling nowadays that you're even scared to go out and live life,
Ah,
all the mass shootings,
it's scary.
it's just horrible nowadays, but you can't give into it. We got to live somehow.
Mm,
We've got to live.
Absolutely.
mm.
It's a really it's a blessing for us to have you here. Not only because you've endured those things of losing a family member, but I feel like in times of absolute darkness, right? People have been in those absolute dark times. You are that one beacon of light
Mm,
Yes,
for them, and
absolutely.
and I commend you for that
Mhm.
because
thank
that takes a huge amount of effort and
And
hard work on your
courage.
part. You
And
know
courage.
that yes, and not only that, because at this point you're hope, and that's what people some people that's all they need. That's
It
all they need.
isn't just me, it's all my board
Well, your
members,
organization,
Yes.
right,
it's
right, your
the
organization,
organization.
yes.
It's the organization that has trained me and taught me and encouraged me and, and to this day I can still call them up. I can call the president and say, "Hey, Connie, this happened," or "I'm feeling this way," and you know what? She lifts me up and we get through it, together,
That's a powerful
Yeah,
thing.
it is. It's a powerful thing, our organization. And I just, as long as I'm even in a wheelchair, I'll be doing this, God willing.
You got the Zoom, right?
Yeah.
I got the Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with some of my final thoughts. Is first, it's just I'm grateful to get to know you and listen to you. Um, and tonight was a conversation about what I think like is the best and worst of humanity, right? Like we discussed the worst of humanity, where like these terrible, horrendous atrocities happen,
Mm.
and at the same time, the best of humanity, where there's people who come together with like real care and real light to offer some type of repair, you know. Um, in some of my trauma work that I have done and been trained in, one of the images that I have right now, which I think is part of what you described tonight, is the best of humanity. As a vision I'll give for you guys is imagine like a mother and a infant baby, right? And the mom's holding the baby and they're cooing, they're making that mother child sound, that ooh, that is the best of humanity. That's the connection that we make together, And when it's ripped, it's the worst, you know. And and for someone to, do what you're doing, where like the moment happens when they laugh again or when they smile again, right? Like that's bringing back the best of what we're able to do together as people. So I salute your work. I'm very, 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 very much in admiration of you, and I want to hear more. I want to get more information about how to bring people to you.
Absolutely.
And thank you for doing that work.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really want to thank you very much, Kathy. My
You're
heart goes out to
welcome.
you,
You're
your family, and
welcome.
to everyone. And oh my God, I just like I'm trying to hold everything in because I feel so passionate about this. It's it's so sad that parents and families have to go through this. And losing a family, I've lost four brothers. It hasn't been, through homicide, but I can't even fathom the thought. And as a mother, we're mothers, we know that we raise our kids for so many years, and sometimes we think they're okay after the age of 18, and it's like when we have to worry the most, right? Because we still worry. We still, as mothers or fathers, we still worry about our kids.
Absolutely.
You have a daughter that's going into the military. God forbid something, happens. Like we don't know when they're gonna get ripped out of our lives, right? It's and this is very close because we're parents. We're all parents here. We're
Mhm.
all parents. So
The worst thing is that phone call.
oh God, I
Yeah.
don't.
That phone
Yeah.
call. And nobody should have it, like you say, it's that reverse cycle. Your grandparents are supposed to die first, and then mothers and fathers, and then children, not this way around. It's
No.
wrong. It's wrong.
No.
You
But
know.
we maybe could try to get you know another session going on, and
Okay.
we
I'd love
yes.
to bring
Okay.
a mother.
Alrighty, let's do
They
that.
just weren't available, the ones that I
Okay. Yes.
contacted tonight, and I'd love to bring a couple other
I
people in
think it
here,
would be
and
great.
yeah,
Yeah, that way
you
people
know,
could hear the stories. We could put pictures out,
And for
yeah.
people that just know, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
I've been in the mental health care industry for a long time, and
Yes.
like I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that this is the first time that I heard of heard of this organization.
Yeah.
Like I want people to know that this is out there.
Right.
Yes.
Well,
And
part of the problem is I'm headed in. She knows I've got one foot out the door as far as going into retirement, and so this last year I've been able to really, really just focus on the organization and get it out there more.
Mhm.
Get it to the networks and get it to the LAPD sending me people constantly now, and the sheriffs and all the organizations. I just sent out a letter of introduction to all the police organization associations, just to get them out there so that even if they encounter just one family.
Yes.
So that's why it's been kind of hard, but you're going to hear a lot more of us moving forward and I
Absolutely.
have board members that are able to spend more time on it too. They're going to be out there in the public more now. We
Mhm.
just weren't able to before as much as now.
And in whatever we could help, we are
We
here.
appreciate it.
And what was
Yeah.
the website again?
POMCLA.org.
Okay.
Alrighty, guys, you hear that? If there's anybody out there that's suffering with depression, grief, of loss of loved ones, please reach out to Kathy or to the organization. Everything will be at the end of our episode. Thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you, Kathy, very much for your stories and your knowledge. Steve, thank you once again. And Tuna. Thank you guys very much. You guys have a great one. Bye. That's all for today. Thank you for watching and listening. It truly means the world to me. If you enjoy the show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe at Let Loose with Lou on Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify.